The porch lights were already on when we pulled into the driveway. Warm yellow light spilling out onto the snow, the kind that makes a house look like it's waiting for you. My daughter pressed her forehead to the car window and smiled. "Do you think Grandma's cookies will still be warm?" she asked. "They probably made too many," I said. "Like always." She laughed. She was 11, old enough to notice everything, still young enough to believe Christmas meant automatic belonging. My name is Claire Donovan. I was 39, a medical office administrator, divorced, and doing my best to give my daughter a sense of tradition that didn't feel fractured just because our family was. This was supposed to be simple: dinner, presents, noise, too much dessert. The same rituals we'd done every year. I rang the doorbell. Nothing happened. I rang it again. Footsteps approached. I could see movement through the glass. Someone laughed inside. The door opened just enough for my mother to look out. She didn't smile. "Oh," she said. "You came?" My daughter stepped forward, holding the small gift bag she'd carefully wrapped herself. "Merry Christmas!" My mother didn't look at her. She looked at me. "This isn't a good time," she said. I blinked. "What do you mean?" My father appeared behind her, arms crossed. "We talked about this." "About what?" My mother sighed, impatient. "We don't want her here tonight." The words landed slowly, like my brain was refusing to translate them. I felt my daughter's hand tighten around mine. "But it's Christmas," she said quietly. My mother opened the door wider, not to let us in, but to step outside. "Not tonight," she repeated. "It's better if you just go." And then she closed the door. The lights stayed on, the laughter continued inside, and my 11-year-old stood on the porch, holding a present no one wanted, realizing for the first time that Christmas wasn't a guarantee. For a moment, none of us moved. The porch light buzzed faintly above us. Snow crunched under our shoes as someone inside shifted a chair. The door stayed closed. My daughter looked up at me, confusion crossing her face before hurt had time to catch up. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked. "No," I said immediately. "Absolutely not." She nodded, but her grip on the gift bag tightened. The paper crinkled under her fingers, and I hated that I noticed that instead of the fact that my parents had just shut a door in her face. I knocked once more, not hard, not angry, just enough to say, "I'm still here." The door opened again, just a crack. "This is awkward," my mother said. "We didn't think you'd actually come." My father stayed behind her, silent. "You invited us," I said. "We assumed you'd understand," she replied. "Tonight is complicated." "For who?" I asked. She exhaled, clearly irritated now. "This isn't the place to discuss it." She looked past me, already disengaging. And then the door closed again, this time for good. My daughter didn't cry. That scared me more than if she had. She just stood there, staring at the wood grain of the door like she was trying to memorize it. After a few seconds, she asked, "Can we still give them the present later?" I swallowed. "We'll take it with us." She nodded, like that made sense. Back in the car, the heat fogged up the windows almost instantly. I sat there for a moment before starting the engine, my hands shaking just enough that I had to grip the steering wheel tighter than usual. "I don't think they want me there," she said softly. "That's not true," I replied. "They made a bad choice." "Why?" I didn't answer right away, because there wasn't an answer that wouldn't burden her with something she didn't deserve to carry. "Sometimes adults get things wrong," I said finally, "and it has nothing to do with the kids standing in front of them." She leaned her head back against the seat. It felt like it did. I reached over and took her hand. "I know," I said, "but I'm right here." When we got home, I made hot chocolate, even though neither of us asked for it. I turned on the Christmas lights in our living room, the ones we'd strung up together, and put on a movie she'd already seen a dozen times. We sat on the couch under the same blanket. She didn't watch the screen much. Neither did I. My phone buzzed later that night. A text from my mother. This didn't have to be dramatic. I stared at the words for a long time. Then I turned the phone face down, because what she called dramatic, I called defining. And I knew, sitting there with my daughter tucked against my side, that this wasn't something we would be smoothing over with time. This was something that had changed the shape of our family, whether they wanted to admit it or not. I didn't confront them the next day. I didn't send a long message explaining how cruel it was or how disappointed I felt. I already knew how that conversation would go. They would defend themselves, reframe it, minimize it. So instead, I adjusted my life. The first thing I did was cancel our plans for New Year's. A simple text. We won't be coming. No explanation, no apology. My mother responded within minutes. You're still upset about Christmas? I didn't reply, because what she was calling being upset was actually me paying attention. I stopped initiating contact. No weekly calls, no updates about school, no photos of projects taped to the fridge or snowmen built in the yard. At first, nothing happened. Then the questions started. Why haven't we heard from her? Is she mad at us? Are you keeping her from us? The language was familiar. It always framed me as the problem, never the choice they made that night on the porch. My daughter noticed the change before they did. Are we not going there anymore? She asked one afternoon while doing homework. No, I said gently, not for a while. She thought about it, pencil hovering over the page. Okay, she said. I don't like standing outside in the cold anyway. She said it lightly, but the words stayed with me. Because children don't forget moments like that. They file them away quietly, and they use them to decide what love feels like. A few weeks later, my father called. We miss her, he said. She should be here. I kept my voice calm. She was there. You closed the door. That was one night, he replied. One night was enough, I said. He didn't argue after that. He didn't apologize either. I started setting boundaries that didn't look dramatic from the outside. We spent holidays differently. We made our own traditions. We chose people who stayed. I didn't announce these changes. I lived them. And over time, the distance stopped feeling like loss and started feeling like protection. The truth was simple, even if it was painful. Anyone who could look at an 11-year-old child standing on a porch at Christmas and decide she didn't belong inside wasn't someone I could trust with her heart. Once I understood that, there was no going back to pretending otherwise. The apology never came. There were messages later, carefully worded, cautious, as if the right phrasing might undo what had already been done. My mother suggested we reset. My father said it was time to move on. But neither of them said they were wrong, and that mattered. The weeks that followed were quieter than any holiday season I could remember. No last-minute invitations, no pressure to show up where we weren't wanted, just space. At first, I worried about how my daughter would carry that night with her, whether she would replay it, whether it would become something heavy she didn't know how to put down. But children don't always hold on to pain the way adults do. They watch what happens next. One evening, while we were decorating a small tree in our living room, she held up an ornament and asked, "Can we stay home on Christmas next year?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. She smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't ask permission. "Good," she said. "I like it better when we're warm." That was the moment I knew. She wasn't defining herself by the door that closed. She was defining herself by the place she was welcomed. We made new traditions that year. Breakfast in pajamas, music too loud for a house with neighbors, dinner that didn't require approval. And slowly, Christmas stopped being about who excluded us and started being about who stayed. My parents eventually felt the distance. Not all at once, but in small absences they couldn't ignore. They weren't part of the stories anymore. They didn't hear about school projects or inside jokes. They weren't there when memories were being made. And when they asked why things felt different, I didn't explain. Because the explanation had already been given. The night they chose to close the door. I used to believe family meant enduring discomfort for the sake of tradition. I don't believe that now. Now I believe family is measured by warmth, by who opens the door when you knock, especially when you're a child. At Christmas, my parents turned away my 11-year-old at the door. They thought it would pass. What they didn't understand was that they weren't just deciding who came inside that night. They were deciding who we would stop waiting for. And once I understood that, I stopped hoping for different behavior and started building a life where my daughter would never have to stand in the cold again. That's the Christmas she remembers now. Not the door that closed, but the place where she was chosen,